Welcome to the happiest place on earth.
They're wanting to attract or find children. They have to surface and go to where the children play.
When I was 5 years old, Matthew Mancuso, a Pittsburgh businessman who was a pedophile, adopted me.
All the statistics that you have heard became real for me when I met this girl, this little girl, a tiny girl with a big, big voice.
Welcome home.
Most children, Disney World is known as the happiest place on earth, or the place that makes your dreams come true. But for one little girl, it became the place that made nightmares come true. And I do mean nightmares. This is her true story. In 1998, investigators across the world began noticing something deeply disturbing. Police weren't just arresting online predators. They were finding the same unidentified little girl appearing again and again in hundreds of illegal images. More than 200 photographs, different offenders, different countries, but always the same child. No one knew her name. No one knew where she lived, and no one knew if she was still alive. Investigators gave her a nickname, the Disney World Girl. The name came from two critical clues, a decorative fountain on the property, and the bedspread on a bed the little girl had been laying in a small room. Specialists digitally removed the abusive content, leaving only the surroundings, and released those altered images to the public, hoping anyone might recognize the location. What happened next showed the power of collective observation. Within a short time, tips began pouring in. People recognized the scenery almost immediately. The fountains and the rooms seemed very familiar to families with children. The photos had been taken at Walt Disney World, specifically at Disney's Port Orleans Resort in Florida. Suddenly, the investigation changed. This wasn't an isolated crime hidden somewhere unknown. This child had been abused in one of the most visited family destinations on earth, surrounded by thousands of vacationing families who had no idea what was happening nearby. It was not known as the happiest place on earth for this little girl. The case became one of the earliest examples of how digital forensics and public cooperation can help identify victims, not just offenders. The Disney World Girl investigation changed how police approached online exploitation cases forever. It proved that identifying victims was just as urgent as catching predators, and that sometimes the smallest background detail can save a life. Because of the careful observations made by ordinary people, the mystery was finally broken. Someone recognized what investigators could not see alone, and through the eyes of the public, the girl would be found and taken away from the monster that put her through hell. Hello, my name is Holly. Welcome to Murder She Said. In order to find me in this big YouTube world, just make sure you smash that subscribe button so you can join us true crime nerds here weekly, right here in my Murder She Said. Also, welcome back to all my faithful, nerdy true crime subscribers, because I never give y'all enough credit. Because I do believe I have the best subscribers in all of this big YouTube world. And I want to thank y'all for always supporting my channel. You are amazing. You are an amazing nerd, true crime nerd. And I love you for that. Although some of you don't claim to be nerds, and that's okay. If you're not a nerd, you can still visit my Murder She Said. I will let you come right on in. Have a glass of tea, and sit a spell. So come on in. Let's get started. At this point in the investigation, Toronto police began collaborating with the Orange County Sheriff's Office in Florida, meticulously combing through old guest lists at the Disney World Resort in their effort to solve the mystery of this missing little girl. Although the location was found where the scene had been filmed, officers still did not know the identity of the Disney World girl. A few months after Toronto police released the doctored child photos of the Disney World girl, Orange County law enforcement decided to up their ante. They released an unmodified picture of a young, dark-haired girl whom they believe might be a material witness to the case of the missing child victim. The Toronto police had discovered this girl's image among graphic photos of the Disney World girl. The image that Orange County released features a girl sitting on a couch just playing a video game. Looks innocent enough. They had thought that this dark-haired girl was a family friend of the predator, but they did not believe she was a victim of this predator they were hunting. So this picture was released without any redactions. Picture of the little girl with her face clearly visible was released to media sources everywhere. It went viral. For back then, that was viral. Although, because we cannot verify whether she was a victim or not, I decided to go ahead and blur her face. Over several years, pictures and videos would be found on the dark web by the police of the little girl being tied up and repeatedly. As the years passed, the police could see her growing older in the photos. In 2003, the Disney World girl would be found by accident, not because of the release of these pictures or from the location, but during none other than a sting. Her rescue began when a Chicago police sergeant who had been posing as a online noticed a new batch of which featured the Disney World girl. The sergeant struck up an online conversation with a child who had the handle of Naked Sister and realized as a gut feeling that this individual might be the source of the Disney girl's disturbing pictures and videos that could be found online. The sergeant then gave the IP address of the handle Naked Sister to the FBI. So on May 27, 2003, 2 federal agents pulled up to a middle-class home in the outskirts of Pittsburgh. Looked like an ordinary home. The timing couldn't have been more perfect because there was a man and a little girl outside. Couldn't hide the little girl now. She was out in the open. And they recognized this little girl as possibly being the Disney World girl. So the agents got out and quickly separated the man and the little girl from each other. One agent tried to take the man inside his home, but he kept yelling back at the little girl to try to keep her from talking. He didn't want her to say anything. The Disney girl was now 10 years old, and the first thing she said was, "Is this about my secret?" The agents would quickly learn that 10-year-old Masha Allen had been adopted from Russia at the age of 5 by this predator. It all started when Matthew Mancuso, a divorced father from Pennsylvania, wanted to adopt a little girl, a single man. He contacted a New Jersey adoption agency requesting information on a 5 to 4-year-old blonde-haired, blue-eyed little girl and chose Masha from a video. On some of the images that were from the orphanage, it actually showed Masha nude. They sent him images of this little girl in the nude. What in the world? They sent a single man pictures of a little girl in the nude. And he's like, I'll take that one. That is disturbing by itself. Not even any other context that the orphanage would send naked pictures of a child. After months of waiting, Matthew traveled to Russia to meet his new little daughter. He visited Masha several times at the orphanage, took her to nice dinners, bought her candy and balloons. Masha had a sad life story before even arriving at the orphanage. Masha was born in southern Russia to an alcoholic mother and a father she never knew. Her own mother tried to kill her when she was only 4 years old by stabbing her in the back of the neck with a kitchen knife. Soon after recovering from her traumatic ordeal, she was sent to the orphanage where life would only continue to get worse. I mean, if it's worse than being stabbed in the neck by a knife, you know it's going to be bad. So at the orphanage, she had to keep all of her stuff, what little stuff she had, hidden under her pillow or everything would get stolen. She said the older kids would abuse the younger kids. It's a horrible place to be. Her mother did visit the orphanage occasionally, told Masha she would be able to return home soon. But after she was there for a whole year, Masha was told she'd instead be among a group of children to be adopted by an American family. Think that would be a good place to go. And it's supposed to go to a family with children. She was excited. She thought her life would change for the better. In Russia, adoption was very rare, and most children expected to age out of the system at about 18 without ever getting adopted. So when an American man arrived saying he wanted to be her father, Masha believed she had finally been chosen. To her, Matthew Mancuso appeared kind and attentive. Like I said, he brought her gifts, took her out for meals, and promised this great new life in America. A home, safety, and a family. Well, maybe not a complete family, because she remembers asking him something. She asked him if I was going to get a mother, and he'd say that he wasn't married and didn't think he ever would be married and that she would not have a mother. And imagine that worried her as a little girl. Like, I thought I was going to a family, with kids and everything, and here I'm going to this strange man's home. I can barely speak English, and that would be a little scary as a little girl to go with a big, huge man. Matthew told adoption officials he was divorced and had an older daughter he simply wasn't close to anymore. No questions asked. Agency accepted his explanation without digging deeper. The adoption agency failed to do a simple background check on Matthew. No one contacted his ex-wife. No one interviewed his bio daughter, who actually had been abused by her father, until she became a teen. When she turned a teen, he was no longer sexually attracted to her, so the abuse ended. So he needed a new little girl to love in this perverted way. However, Matthew did not have a previous criminal record as a sex offender because his daughter had never reported her abuse. The odd thing, though, is single men are very rarely allowed to adopt unrelated girls. Yet this adoption went through without a glitch. Matthew was a millionaire. He worked as an engineer for his father's company. And as you see in the Epstein case, rich people get pretty much whatever they want. And, the world bows down to him, I guess. So he had a lot of money. He could afford to pay for this little girl. And he could afford to bribe people into getting this little girl. But in order to make this adoption legally binding, he had to go through a home study process. The home study described Mancuso's loss of his relationship with his birth daughter, Rochelle, as a primary motivation to adopt. So when Matthew went through this process, he had to be approved for adoption through a home study process. The home study described Matthew's loss of his relationship with his birth daughter, whose name was Rochelle, as a primary motivation to adopt. He divorced his wife when Rochelle was 10 and was then given weekend visitations, which became fewer and fewer. Finally, when Rochelle became a teen, the visitations ended, and we know why. He was no longer attracted to her. So Matthew insisted he needed to adopt a little girl because he missed that kind of relationship with his daughter. That's so disgusting. He missed that relationship. And they're thinking, oh, how sweet, father-daughter. It wasn't that at all. He was a weirdo. He knew exactly what he was going to do with this little girl, and it wasn't going to be a normal parent-child relationship. He was basically wanting to adopt this little girl so he could have a child slave. He told the adoption agency he was financially stable and just missed being a parent. And he said it had to be a girl because that's what he was used to because of his daughter, and he also had friends with little girls who would call him uncle. So he ended up just paying about $20,000 for a little girl to become his slave. Finally, after Masha arrived in the United States, no one visited her or checked up on her at the home. They were supposed to conduct follow-up post-placement, have visits. This was required by Russian law in order to learn whether Masha was adjusting to her new home. But Matthew passed the first visit requirement by falsifying a report that appeared to be approved by social services. But actually, if they had looked into that report, they would discover that both the telephone number and the social service agency listed on the report did not even exist. Matthew passed the second visit requirement by substituting an in-person visit to his home with a simple phone call. They never looked at Masha to see if she looked okay or anything. Just talked to a social worker on the phone. Third visit, it never occurred. But Masha's adoption was still finalized, even though the visits weren't complete. First night at her new 3-bedroom home, Masha was surprised to discover that she didn't even have a bedroom. Instead, Matthew made Masha sleep with him. And the first night, he said, "Daddy loves you." That's creepy. And he didn't let her sleep. He basically fondled her all night while he wasn't wearing any clothes. First couple of nights, he touched her legs, her chest, and he started touching her privates. And then a few days later, he started raping her repeatedly. Soon after that, he dressed Masha up as a young bride, a 5-year-old young bride. And they had some sort of play wedding and told her that she was married to him. Basically, he treated this little girl as an adult, made her wear sexy adult clothing. Masha was also forced to take daily showers with Matthew. Matthew kept a close watch on Masha, isolating her socially. She wasn't usually allowed to go outside or see anybody or walk around outside by herself. She could have friends over, but they were not allowed to stay very long. And, she spoke very little English, so it was often hard for her to communicate with anybody anyway. She felt scared. I'm sure it was hard to communicate what she was feeling. She was just a little girl, and he was keeping her isolated. She had no one to turn to in a strange country. You know that would have been very scary. One thing shocking that he did let her do was attend school. But she was threatened to never speak a word what was happening at that home. He'd say, "This is our little secret." And he'd tell her bad things would happen if she told. Then he began to take pictures of her. At first, they were typical pictures with nothing unusual or explicit, with her fully clothed. But gradually, he began to photograph her in her underwear, then completely naked and finally performing acts, At one point, he even changed her to a wall in his basement for some pictures and videos with BDSM overtones. So after he took these pictures in the basement with her all chained up and everything, she'd be naked, chained up. Sometimes he'd just leave her there overnight. It's just another way to torture and control her, I suppose. He would always reward her with her participation in these photos or videos with toys and video games, and also a Disney World trip every year. But to her, those Disney World trips, like I said, were nightmares because some of the most horrific images were taken at Disney World. Some of the images that could be found, she was on a Harley in suggestive poses, naked and chained to exercise equipment in a gym. Like I said, horrible images at Disney World. So after she began to grow, he wanted to keep her tiny. He wanted to keep her looking young. Didn't want her to grow into a teen. That would reduce his fun. He couldn't have any fun with her anymore. I don't know what he planned on doing with her when she became a teen. So this, she was allowed limited amounts of food, usually like peanut butter sandwiches and raw veggies. He wouldn't give her any milk products at all. He would mentally abuse her by criticizing her thin frame, said she was so fat, so that she would try to eat less. He tried to make her feel fat and ugly. He didn't want her to grow. So at the age of 10, Masha was the size of a 5-year-old little girl when she was rescued. And no one at her school ever said anything or asked about her home life. When Masha attempted to express how unhappy she was to her father, Matthew responded with a twisted justification that his abuse was normal because, they were married. For 5 whole years, nobody, not a single social worker, came to check on her. When Masha was rescued, she only weighed 52 pounds. Her hair was brittle. She was suffering from calcium deficiency because, like I said, she wasn't allowed any form of calcium products. She had never had a birthday party or been allowed to even celebrate a birthday. And it wasn't until Masha was rescued that she realized that her father had put those videos and pictures he had taken of her on the internet. He was showing them to other people. He had distributed these videos and images through chat rooms on the internet in exchange for images of other people's children. Masha appeared in more than 200 photos that circulated on the internet. Law enforcement estimate that these images of her have been viewed online by people around the world millions of times. During that time, her images were just traded like trading cards and were found in the collection of 80% of the predators that were arrested. For years, Matthew's bio daughter Rochelle thought her father had adopted a boy, so she thought that child would be safe. A chance encounter with a family friend informed Rochelle the truth. She said her heart dropped when she learned that her father had adopted a little girl. Still, she says fear and shame prevented her from alerting authorities about her father's abuse. Rochelle never revealed her terrible secret about her life until the FBI contacted her during their investigation. So she now feels that if she told someone, Masha might have been spared and not had been put through any of that at all. Sadly, she kept it a secret. That's a lot of times why other children get victimized. Children do keep it a secret, and they won't tell what happened to them. Even as an adult, sometimes we don't like to speak about it. I know I was 40 years old before I'd speak about what a neighbor had done to me. Luckily, I know he didn't victimize maybe too many other victims because he died in a car wreck when he was quite young. I hope it didn't affect anybody else. I was so little, I didn't even understand. But anyway, I think it's great that Masha had the courage to speak about everything that happened to her because a lot of children don't when they become adults. And she was still a child when she began to speak about her pains and struggles. Even though the images of the Disney World girl didn't help Masha be found, they did serve one purpose. She decided to use her newfound fame in order to help other victims just like her. He even testified in Congress. He was on the Nancy Grace show. Oprah Winfrey actually did a huge interview with her. She was just trying to help other victims any way she could by telling her story. And I think that took a lot of courage to be able to open up like that. There was even a law passed called Masha's Law.
Usually when a kid is hurt, the abuser goes to prison and the abuse is over. But because Matthew put my pictures on the internet, the abuse is still going on. Anyone can see them. People are still downloading them. We get notices from the FBI every time someone is arrested for it. I want every single one of them to go to jail and really be punished, but that's a problem too. I found out last summer that if someone downloads a song off the internet, the penalty is 3 times worse than if someone downloads child porn. I couldn't believe it. How can this be? That's when I decided we had to change the laws about downloading child porn.
So like I said, through her courage, she was able to introduce a new legislation known as Masha's Law with the help of then Senator John Kerry. Matthew Mancuso was sentenced to 15 years on federal charges. He also pleaded guilty to an and was sentenced to serve an additional 35 to 70 years in prison. Masha's courage changed laws, changed investigations, and changed how the world understands the online exploitation. Masha's second adoption by a single woman named Faith Allen was actually legally terminated in 2009. After Masha filed a lawsuit alleging further neglect and abuse in that home. It doesn't say the name of the third family that she went to after that. And then I guess she stayed in their home until she moved to Pennsylvania as an adult. As of 2026, Masha she'd probably be about 34 years old now. She lives a private life under a different name to protect her identity after years of public testimony and legal battles. And I do hope that she is extremely happy now, that she's getting from an adult what she never received as a child. Maybe she's getting her second childhood. I hope she's having a great time in life. For years, the world knew her only as a face in the background of evidence, a child with the name Disney World Girl. Investigators searched for a victim while she was living in plain sight, going to school, walking past neighbors, waiting for someone to notice that something wasn't right, but no one noticed. Her story is not only about cruelty, it's about survival, it's about accountability, and it's about a survivor who refused to stay silent and help change laws so other children might be protected. If there's one thing to take away, it's this: awareness matters, speaking up matters, and believing children matters. Thank you for spending this time with me, Simon and Max. They're down here. If this story moved you, taught you something, or reminded you why these stories deserve to be told, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because every view helps keep these victims' story alive and their voices heard. And you wouldn't get to see my beautiful little boys, Simon and Max, either, if you didn't come back and visit us at the Murder She Shed. Come back. We'd love to have you. And we're going to go do something fun, aren't we, baby? Let's go do something fun. Let's go do something fun. What are you going to do? Or the place that made... In 1998. My dog's rolling in the leaves. Back. Can we stop that? It's picking up on my mic, or I think it is. It might not be. Approached online exploitation cases forever. Did that beat? Son, come out. One of them. Who is that? Max? What in the world have you... You really did go all out with those leaves, didn't you? I don't know if you can see him, but he has crap all over him. All over you. You're the dirtiest dog I've ever seen right now. You have way too much fun in those leaves. You're a little crap rolling dog. So you sit down and don't roll on my floor and get crap all over my floor. Okay, just sit down. Just sit down. Just gradually sit down there. Filing a report. Here are chickens outside. Chickens are scratching around. I hope it's not picking up. Which one is doing that? Home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play. Them stupid chickens. Why are you gonna scratch at that? Why are you scratching? I'm gonna shut this door. I know the answer to it. I'm just gonna shut this door. You coming in or you will get out? Because I'm gonna shut this door. In or out? You want in? Got right over here now because it knows it's pissing me off. So then it got right by the doggy door to piss me off some more. Just scratching the leaves. I don't know what the deal is. The leaves of my animals today. I don't know. Oh, you're pulling my shirt off, dude. to ride the four-wheeler. Imagine that. All right. See you again.